and welcome to episode 70 of the Solosaurus podcast. I'm Michael Eckenfels.
And I'm Martin Gonzalez.
And today we're here to tell you to stop your grinning and grab your linen because this episode will mostly come out at night. Mostly.
I say we take off, nuke this episode from orbit. It's the only way to be sure.
By listening to this episode, you've just boarded one express elevator going down.
At least you don't see us effing each other over for a gosh darn percentage.
So, episode 70 will, if you haven't figured it out yet, deal with Aliens Bug Hunt, a new cooperative game for 1 to 4 players in which you play squads of colonial marines as they breach the colony of Hadley's Hope from the movie Aliens. If you've not seen this movie, you'll probably want to, unless, of course, you're freaked out by horror, in which case you probably shouldn't. If you have not seen it, though, I'm almost jealous of you because imagine seeing this movie for the first time again.
Yeah, we learned about this game when we did the news portion of episode 69, and Aliens Bug Hunt was one of the news items, which I think led us to reaching out to Eric over at Stone Valley Games to see if he had it in stock, which led to him very kindly sending each of us a copy to learn, to play, and then to review. And so now here we are, and I think we're ready to file our after-action report.
This podcast is brought to you by Stone Valley Games, your friendly, distant game store. Check them out at stonevalleygames.com. It's a great shop because most of the games over there are great for solo players, and you don't have to dig that deeply in the website to find something that you can enjoy as a solo player, like you might have to on other websites. Head over there, check them out. And the owner, Eric, is the reason, as Martin said, why we each have a copy of this game for our review today. This particular game can be had for a very competitive price, so go check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, and I just want to put in the good word for how they packaged the game. When it arrived, it was in 2 layers, and there was a lot of really, like solid bubble wrap. So it shows a lot of personal effort for me, or rather on the part of Eric and the team over at Stone Valley Games to protect your investment. They understand that, as gamers, we're very particular about the condition in which our games arrive after being shipped to us, which, quite frankly, that's not true for, most game retailers, for some game retailers. So I just want to call that out in particular, that they really packaged the games very, very well indeed. And they gave me a nice mirrored sticker, hologram sticker of Stone Valley Games, which I put on my computer.
Very cool. Yeah, I got one of those too. He includes a handwritten note with every game too, so that's really cool. And it was packed so well. I mentioned it to him actually that, wow, you packed this so great. And he said, yeah, it's kind of an offshoot of him having shipped things overseas before for military folks, and they get handled with a little bit less than love. I don't think it's intentional. It's just, you're shipping something 15,000 miles around the world. It's going to get a few dings in it, but so it's kind of a matter of practicality, but still it's really cool that he packs them so well. Today's solo news is brought to you by TableFor1.me, where the Solosaurus podcast exclusively gets its one-player game news. Thanks as always to Frederick Schultz of TableFor1.me for his ongoing efforts to bring us solo games. By the way, you can also read his solo gaming news blog on Board Game Geek. We will add that link to the show notes as well. Now, don't let me forget to do that, Martin.
Okay, yep. Hey Siri, set a reminder to remind Michael to add TableFor1.me to the show notes.
I think we did this last time, and I forgot to do it.
Darn it! Well, then I have to set a reminder for the reminder.
Well, let's see. What's up first here? Frostpunk, publishers Glass Cannon Unplugged and 11-Bit Studios, is bringing Frostpunk to the board game table. This is a new Kickstarter campaign, and it's a 1 to 4 player adaptation of it says hugely popular computer game from designer Adam Kwapinski. And I think that this game is on Steam. I've got it, and it's a really cool game where you've got people trying to survive in a freezing cold environment. You got this central heating structure, and then you have to build like settlements around it. industries, all kinds of other things. So your population grows. You got to make sure that they're taken care of. You got to make sure that they stay warm, that you find resources that you can mine and use for the growth of the colony. And I hadn't played it too much. I played it just enough to get that into my head. But the interesting thing here is that 11-bit Studios also made the board game This War of Mine, which is a computer game I also have on Steam, and it's actually a board game I used to have as well, but I didn't accidentally. I say accidentally now because I really wish I hadn't sold it, but I did. Have you played This War of Mine, Martin?
I have not. I mean, okay, so I also own the iPad version of the computer game. I played it. I tried the first stage. I was horrible at it. It was super depressing. Because of the theme, and I just didn't pick up with it. And I mean, that's also kind of related to the fact that I don't really play video games at this point anymore. I used to be a huge video gamer in my younger days, and I don't really. Also, shout out to a fellow solo board gamer, Cat Sides. Practically every week, if not more frequently, she bugs me on the Facebook group to whenever it comes up, Martin, you need to buy This War of Mine, the board game. So there's a lot of pressure on me, I feel, to buy This War of Mine, and I haven't given in yet, which is weird because I usually, people who know me, what's my criteria for adding a game to my collection? Does it have cards and tiles and cardboard? Okay, it's in. It's like the bar isn't very high, like for me at all. So,
well, that's all right.
Anyway, yeah,
it's a good game. I enjoyed I played through it once. I never had time to get it back to the table again. This War of Mine, I'm saying. So, the components are awesome, but the only thing about it too is it takes up a large amount of space. This War of Mine does, and it looks like Frostpunk does also. Looking at the image on TableFor1.me's news story, this is a lot of space. I mean, granted, this is probably more than one player right now, but just imagining even a solo player with maybe 2/3 of this, wow, you're going to be challenged, I think, finding the space for it. But the minis look really cool. The game looks pretty interesting.
It looks good. I mean, like I'm a sucker for theme, and the theme is like a post-apocalyptic kind of like frozen wasteland thing going on here, and you've got like a ragtag community, and you have to survive in this. So I love that. I love that theme. One of my favorite deck building games of all time, to not go off on a tangent here, but let's go off on a tangent, is Arctic Scavengers, which is the same. It's a similar theme, right? It's like post-apocalyptic. There's been some sort of snow catastrophe, and now most of the world's population is gone, and the remaining survivors are trying to survive in this cold ice snow ravaged environment. And so it sounds like Frostpunk is in a very similar world. So that's interesting to me. Yeah. And
cool.
And yeah, like you said, the miniatures look amazing. So
yeah, I'm a sucker for miniatures. You're a sucker for theme. I'm definitely a sucker for miniatures. That's the sad thing too. If there's not much theme, I mean, this looks like it's got a lot of it, but even if there's not a lot of theme to a game, if there's cool minis, ooh, I'm in. Like a caveman. Yeah.
Have you played Adam's other games? It's mentioned here that he designed Nemesis, Lords of Hellas.
No, yeah. No, I would love Nemesis, but it kickstarted for $300.
Isn't Nemesis like thinly veiled aliens type of game as well?
Yep, pretty much. It also reminds me of Among Us, which is a very popular social deduction game on Steam right now. But it's not that. I mean, you're not fighting. Actually, you are. There is some conflict in Nemesis with other players, I think, where you're messing with them, and some people I think have got this hidden role where you have to sabotage systems and do things like that. And I'm not too keen on that anymore. I mean, I thought it was cool in some games, but I don't know. But still, given that it's got Xenomorphs in it, at least I don't know what they call their bad guys in that game. I'm still like, ooh, yeah.
Yep. Xenomorphs, I'm interested.
Yep, absolutely. Bring it on.
All right.
We'll try it out. Next, we have a game called Fantastic Factories Manufactions. Fantastic Factories Manufactions. Say that 7 times fast. The publisher, Deepwater Games, is launching a Kickstarter campaign for this particular title. And it is actually a new expansion to the original 1 to 5 player game designed by Joseph Z. Chen and Justif Faulkner. And in this game, you're
Mhm.
competing to build uh, as you can probably figure from the title, amazingly efficient factories by acquiring blueprints, hiring contractors, rolling dice, and deploying workers. And that sounds interesting. I'm not sure it appeals to me particularly, but Martin, you probably have some more experience with engine builders. Does that what it sounds like to you?
Yeah, definitely. So I will say I'm very excited about this one. I did back it at the print and play level. Um, Fantastic Factories is one of my top 10 favorite games. Straight up, I'll just say that right now, because it is an engine builder, right? And it is a dice as workers placement game. And basically, on your turn, you roll your dice, and then based on your results, you place them in spots that can change every game. So there's a lot of variety. Um,
Hmm.
and then placing them gives you different benefits. And then the real kind of like fun in the game for me is when you can figure out how to chain them together and do more stuff on your turn and really get to squeeze an efficiency and optimization out of your turn. So I can place my dice here and it gives me this energy, but I have this other card where if I give up this much energy, it gives me this. And so when you start to figure out how to combo and how to chain, the different cards in your hand off of each other to turn benefits into even greater benefits, that's where this game really starts coming to life. And as a solo game, you are up against what's called the machine. And the machine is this relentless victory point generating monster. This robot, this relentless cyborg who's every turn he's just like generating victory points. So you got to keep up because he's going to be right there with you, or probably in most of my games a little ahead of you. And so it's kind of getting your juices flowing. But the cool thing is that it's very easy to operate the machine. So as a solo experience, you play exactly the same way as you would play in multiplayer, and then you just spend like 5 to 10 seconds seeing what the machine does on their turn, and then it's back to you. So it's very so I can go on obviously, but I'm very excited about the manufactions expansion. And by the way, this also includes the subterfuge mini expansion. So really it's manufactions and subterfuge is what this Kickstarter is all about, and they are expansions to what I think is a really, really great game, which is Fantastic Factories. Again, like I said, one of my top 10. It's never leaving my collection, and I'm very excited about it.
I'm intrigued now. I mean, I was kind of like, okay, well, maybe. But now the more you've talked about it, the more I'm like, that sounds interesting. I might be able to do that. I actually like that method of rolling dice and adding them and chaining them. I'll say something like role player, for instance, which is totally different concept,
Mhm.
but that's still kind of cool. I like that. Okay.
Yeah, and the thing I will say about Fantastic Factories is that the art can be divisive or divisive. I love it, and it's got a distinctive kind of whimsical machine-like cartoon style. But some folks, it's a turnoff for them, and that might be one reason why they don't look more deeply. I think mechanically, this game is chef's kiss.
Nice. Okay, very cool. It almost sounds like you're playing against Skynet, the way you described
Oh
that.
yeah, the machine could be Skynet. Yeah.
All right. And our third game we'd like to talk to you about is Core Worlds Empires, which is coming to Kickstarter and will include official solo rules for the original game. It's my understanding this came out in 2011. Is that correct, Martin? The first
The
version?
the original game is a deck building game that came out in 2011. Now, Core Worlds Empires is by the same designer, Andrew Parks, although he's working with co-designing it with this guy Christopher Guild. And I think it's set in the same universe, but it doesn't look to be a similar type of game. This one looks to be a worker placement game, whereas the original Core Worlds was a deck builder, is a deck builder, I should say.
Okay. Yeah, it says
Yeah.
1 to 5 players, so it's definitely in the solo realm. 6 empires have risen from the ashes of the galactic realm, still cemented by the alliance that has enabled their unprecedented conquest of the galaxy. So it sounds almost like Master of Orion to an extent. You've got different factions that are fighting over territory. Is that kind of the premise of the original? I mean, like I said, I've never heard of the original one.
The original has been on my, so I like deck builders. The original has been on my list for a long, long, long time. I've
Okay.
never actually pulled the trigger on it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah,
All
it does remind me a little bit of Master of Orion.
So, to our game review, Aliens Bug Hunt, designed by Ryan Miller, published by Upper Deck Entertainment in 2020 for 1 to 4 players. Aliens Bug Hunt is a cooperative tile laying game where up to 4 squads of Colonial Marines, each controlled by a player, but as a solo player, you can take as many squads as you want, really, into the colony complex on LV 426, straight out of the movie Aliens. The complex is hidden at start, but then is revealed slowly through gameplay, and aliens will certainly come out to play. Your goal is to locate mission tokens to complete missions and evacuate the complex before it's too late. Xenomorphs are represented by dice, which are rolled to represent whether they are killed or not and whether they do damage to the Marines in your squad. The game comes with a lot, but not all, of the named characters in the film, including Ripley, Hicks, Vasquez, Apone, Bishop, and so on, each with a unique ability or abilities to them. So they're all a little bit different, the named ones. At the start of the game, you choose one named character to be your squad leader, and then you add a couple of nameless grunts to your player board. The character or grunt in the rightmost of the 3 slots on your player board is on point and will always take damage first. So it's almost always smart just to put your named character in the last slot so they don't get killed too quickly.
Oh, sure.
Uh,
Yeah.
Martin, tell us about your relationship experience with the game.
With the game, I got extremely excited when I learned that this game actually existed, as I said from a previous news segment. And I think we've already talked about this in a previous pod. The first 2 films, Alien and Aliens, were a huge part of my childhood formation as a proto geek hard science fiction fan. And the fact that James Cameron, the director of the movie, wrote the Colonial Marines in this film as a direct homage to one of my all-time favorite science fiction books of all time, which is Robert A. Heinlein's Starship Troopers. And Cameron's Colonial Marines, to me, as soon as I was watching it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the mobile infantry. Cameron is writing his version of the mobile infantry. They just don't have their battle suits. So suffice to say, I was extremely excited to have the chance to command my own squad of Colonial Marines, or my own squads of Colonial Marines, as they're trying to complete their initial sweep of the colony complex, which is really, to me, one of the most tension-filled parts of the movie Aliens. And to be able to just kind of replay that scene over and over and over in different ways is a dream come true. That's the big draw of this game for me.
Yes, absolutely. And I got a second Starship Troopers here. I've read that book since high school many times. Actually, rebought it just a few weeks ago to reread it again. Fantastic book. The movie, not so much, but the book is great. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong. So I honestly
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree with you. The movie, there's things I love about that movie, but it's just
Yeah.
that.
You
Yeah,
got to take it with a grain of salt. It's meant to be satire, and if you're a
It
hardcore,
is.
yeah, and it's got its moments that way. So if you just look at it that way, it's a pretty good movie. But as a representation of that book, nah, not so much.
Yep.
So I nearly choked when I saw this game was out there because I'm a total unabashed fan of the movie Alien and Aliens. We both are, actually, as we've indicated here and in previous podcasts. We've probably seen this movie 100 times at least between the two of us. So my love of this movie and the genre, not to mention the fact that James Cameron helped make it come to life, really set the bar high for my expectations here, admittedly. So let's talk components. The game has 125 cards doing a variety of different things. There's 4 squad tiles to track 3 Marines each on them, as well as 4 squad miniatures that look like Colonial Marines that represent those squads on the game board. And there's also a Hive Track complex entry board and 30 xenomorph dice, as well as 30 quarter tiles that represent the interior of the colony of Hadley's Hope. Martin, what did you think of the components?
Yeah, so let's go into particulars, right? So let's first talk about the cards. So Upper Deck is a company that specializes in card games. Upper Deck, I first learned of them through Marvel Legendary. And it's the same company that makes a whole lot of deck building games. So they make cards. And so the cards in this game are pretty much, they feel the same to me as the cards in their other games that I own. Standard poker-sized cards, no linen finish or anything like that. So they get the job done. But the feel themselves, nothing to write home about. I will say, though, that the card art, especially for the named characters, it's great. It's really great, especially considering that Upper Deck's track record of card art for some other games that I could mention. I'm looking at you, Legendary Encounters Firefly, is spotty at best, if not horrendous. So the art in this game, the card art for the named characters, is really, really good and really kind of gets you in the mood. So the cards themselves, nothing to write home about, but the card art for the named characters is great. What did you think of the cards?
For the cards, I like the cards too. I love the art on them. I love that they didn't use movie stills. I think one of our listeners posted that in the forums, in the Facebook forum, and I really liked that observation because the artwork is really nice, and they didn't use movie stills and go lazy in that direction. That's really good. The cards, otherwise, as you said, they're really not all that much to write home about. They're just poker-sized cards. The design on some of them is pretty fantastic, though. The creative one, especially with the tracker cards that you use when you spawn aliens, that's pretty cool too. Overall, I thought they were pretty nice. It's nothing major, nothing amazing, but the artwork is pretty good, and I like the functionality of them.
When you mentioned the proximity sensor or the proximity tracker cards, that's another piece that like makes me. I almost hear Hudson's voice, saying, "There's something moving in here, and it ain't us, man."
Right, exactly.
When I see those proximity tracker cards.
That can't be right. That's inside the room. Yep. I love that little device. It was so small and it didn't have a lot of screen time, but man, it ramped up the tension in that movie so much. So that was really cool. So the other thing is the dice, and that was something of a surprise. Martin, what did you think of that?
To be honest, when I realized that the Xenomorphs in this, so there's a on the box, right? There's a huge nice artwork of the alien queen, right? Yep. And then you're jazzed and you open it up, and then the first thing you see is 30 dice. And then you read the rules and you're like, oh, the Xenomorphs are represented by dice. Oh, you know what I mean? Like, right. This is Aliens. This is the absolutely most badass thing about Aliens are the Xenomorphs. They're the scariest, most memorable, most distinctively designed creatures in all of film history, in my personal opinion, springing forth from the demented, nightmares of H.R. Geiger. How do you say his name? And then
I don't know.
And then in this game is called Aliens Bug Hunt. The bugs are the Xenos, and they play an utterly huge part of the theme, feel, story, gameplay, and they're represented by dice. 30 small, gray, slightly translucent dice. And then when I realized that, I'm like, womp womp. It's like, so the dice, there's 30 of them, so there's 30 Xeno, so they're limited, right? And then they 4 of their faces are blank, and which means if you get a blank result, you kill that Xenomorph, right? So it's easy to kill them. It's easy to kill an individual Xenomorph, which I can thematically tracks with the film, right? It's like the guns of the Colonial Marines are able to like rip these things apart on a one-to-one basis. The problem is they tend to swarm all over you, and you don't have enough ammo to take them all out before they overrun you, right? So I think thematically it works great, right? And then the dice have a red bite mark on one side, which represents, you took damage, or your point man took damage. And then they have a white scratch mark on another face, which means you don't take damage, but the Xeno is still there. You didn't take it out. So yeah, so I think they work obviously from a mechanical perspective. It's just, I really wish they were miniatures. I really wish that this. Of course, I would have been horrendously expensive, but I just got disappointed. I don't know. What did you think of the dice?
Yeah, same here. So when I heard about the game on Stone Valley Games site, I thought, oh, that's so cool. Oh my gosh, I wonder if it's going to be like Aliens versus Predator. I think it's called Primal Hunt. I could be wrong. There's a board game that came out about 5, 6 years ago. Fantastic miniatures. All the Marines, all of the aliens had their own miniatures too. They were beautiful. They were amazing. I think I did an unboxing video on it way back in the day. Never played it. Ended up selling it, unfortunately, because the rule book was really bad. But that's the first thing that came to mind when I saw this. I thought, oh my gosh, I wonder if there's going to be really cool minis in it. Then I went to Board Game Geek to get info, and I saw the video by Upper Deck on there. They were doing a BGG Con video that was introducing the game, and I
Hmm.
saw, oh, that was the same response as Martin. Dice. Okay, but from a gameplay element, though, it's works pretty well. I mean,
Yeah,
but yeah, thematically for me, I when I placed
yeah.
dice on the board, I would put them with the little red bite mark up because that was more thematic to me
Sli-
than just a blank die. You know?
Slightly more thematic, right?
Yeah, very
And
slightly.
I mean, like, I'm torn, right? Because obviously, miniatures can't do gameplay wise, mechanically wise, what dice can do. And for a small, kind of simple, compact game like this, yeah, it makes sense. It's just, I don't know. It was disappointing.
A little bit,
Yeah,
yeah. But the size of the box, when you get the box, as Eric described it to me before he sent it to me, it was an ammo can looking thing.
right.
And he's right. Yeah, it looks just like one. It's really cool though. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's no way they're going to fit all kinds
No,
of miniatures in
no,
that box. If they did, the game would also probably be ridiculously priced too. But
double the price for sure.
yeah, but for us, would that be a problem? Would you buy it at a higher price point for a bunch of aliens
If I
minions?
got if I
Yeah,
got 30 detailed alien
yeah,
miniatures, heck yeah.
yeah, yeah. See, exactly. So Upper Deck, take note. So the tiles too, that make up the complex. I thought that was interesting because they're hidden. You shuffle them at start and you flip them over as you reveal and go through the complex. Martin, what did you think of that?
So I like that part of it. I have actually been, searching for a good tile laying game that isn't Carcassonne, right?
Very good.
where
Good luck.
where you can have meaningful decisions and it's soloable. And there's actually a game out there that's been around there for like 2 to 3 years now called Unknown. Which, by the way, if you try to search for that, you're going to get. It's very, very difficult to find this game because they chose to call it Unknown. It doesn't. You get a lot of meaningless results there. But it's a tile laying game, and so this game kind of reminded me of that. But I will say about the tiles themselves, about the physical construction of the tiles themselves, they're nice and thick, but they don't have rounded corners. Now, as a print and play enthusiast myself, that bugs the crap out of me. When I make tiles for my print and play games, I take the time. I have a special tool to round all the corners. So the fact that a production game doesn't have rounded corners is unforgivable for me. And I have half a mind to take my corner cutter and round all these corners
I
myself.
know.
I'm
Yeah.
not even joking right now. And then the other thing is the backs. I'm holding one in my hands right now. The back is a flat black back, which again makes sense from a thematic perspective because black represents like unexplored. But couldn't they have like added like a little bit of extra thing there, like maybe like a green gradient? I don't know. So it's a black tile, and then you flip it, and then it looks like a kind of generic, industrial hallway representing the colonial marine. That part of the I'm sorry, Hadley's Hope. So they're
That's
okay.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they're okay.
Yeah, they're okay. They're small. They're smaller than I expected, but that's okay because I could fit them on the table. I was laughing like I was when you said rounding corners because that's an argument among wargamers that is timeless and everlasting. Talking
Okay.
about clipping corners of counters. I love doing that.
Oh,
I've got an Oregon laminations tool myself, and now
oh,
that you
nice.
mention it, right? Yeah, it's a great little tool. And now that you're mentioning that, I'm like thinking the same damn thing. It didn't occur to me before, but now I'm like, yeah, I could round those corners. That's a good point.
It would have to be worth the effort though. Like the gameplay itself
Yeah,
would have to be worth the investment of time because
yeah,
30 tiles means 30 times 4 corners. What is that? 4 times 3,
yeah. Oh,
120
dude.
corners. And these are thick. These are thick tiles.
Yeah. Consider doing that with a war game when you have 800 counters to do.
No.
Yeah. Well,
No
see,
thanks.
for me, that's actually. I know we're going off topic here, but this is a relaxing thing for me. Sitting watching
Okay,
Netflix or
yeah, yeah.
something,
Oh
and
yeah.
and clipping. That's kind of fun. And some people know, and I know a
Yeah.
few friends of mine who are adamantly against rounding corners. But anyway, regardless, I apologize for going off on a rant there.
That's fine.
For
That's fine.
the You're absolutely correct with the black side of them. I'm not really. I'm like, yeah, there could have been something done here. I don't have the answer. I wish I did. But the art on the counter itself is actually kind of nice. And I'm looking at one of the more busier ones right now. It's one that has a objective
Hmm.
location on it. It's got a alien icon with a number on it, which indicates how many aliens you place on that tile when you reveal it. It's got
Hmm.
the barriers along a couple of the sides, and then it's got the light where which represents the side of the tile that your Marines enter in upon. And it's really not bad from a design perspective that way. It's very dark. It's really hard to see in this current light that I have. You really need a good light for seeing the detail in it. But you've got like desks overturned and chairs here and there. Um,
Yeah.
it's. I kind of like that. And you're right; they're very thick and they're easy to handle. Um, yeah, I didn't really have a problem with them otherwise. But yeah, I just felt like this was another thing, and with a lot of the components, where it's like you almost get to the finish line of a race, but you're not quite there. You've done really well.
Right.
You've done great time, but you just kind of stopped. And it's like, why didn't you just go over the end and finish it?
Yeah. Exactly.
Anyway,
No, I feel that. I agree with you. I agree with that observation. Right. It's like,
right.
yeah, you could have just taken that extra mile.
Exactly. And speaking of the squads, the squad
Hmm.
figures,
Yeah.
I don't know, there are four of them. They're all different,
As
which is
far
good. They're not the same generic Marine. What are your thoughts on those, Martin? Marine?
Yeah, I mean,
Whoops.
um, so again, the miniatures are very miniature. They're small. I don't think they're very detailed. Um, they seem like just a step up from a kind of generic toy soldier figure for me. They don't clearly represent a particular character, which again, you would be hard because they only have four. So there was one figure that's holding a shotgun, and I'm like, okay, that's
Yes.
Hicks. So I
Right.
played
Exactly.
Hicks.
Yep.
And then there's
Absolutely.
one other figure that is holding what I guess is intended to be a smart gun, although it's too small. So I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, that's Vasquez. And then that's it.
Right.
Like, that's I really would have wanted more distinctiveness and just size and then but again you're talking about a game that costs $30, right, or a little bit $35. So yeah, they're not a selling point for me, but they get the job done, I guess, is how I feel about them.
Yeah, they're very functional. They do their job. They look just different enough that you can just at a glance tell that they're different, but they do include colored bases for each one.
That's
So
nice.
yeah, so they snap onto the bottom and they're color coded to the squad board that player has, so you know which one is which. Really, that actually works better than the minis exactly themselves.
Yes.
They're not very detailed, but I think for their size, they're probably okay. For the cost of the game, they're definitely it's acceptable. But again, this is something that could have just been pushed just a little bit further and made maybe a little bit better. But maybe that's another consideration too, is because the tiles are so small, having larger minis might have been a little too overwhelming for the space.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know, but yeah, a little disappointed myself. But for the game, for the purposes, they do the job.
Hmm.
So speaking of those squad boards, as we mentioned before, the each squad is represented by its own board, which has three spaces for its Marines, and then it has a turn sequence printed on there as well. What's your opinion on that squad board, Martin?
I actually like the squad boards here. First of all, they're really nice and thick, and they do have an aliens bug hunt design on the back, and each back is the player color, so it's easy to tell them apart. So they actually did exert that effort that I was looking for with the player boards or the squad boards. The other thing is, whenever I make my own or design my own boards or player mats or whatever, I always include the turn sequence somewhere on my designs. So the fact that they stole my idea and put the turn sequence, it's not really my original idea, but that they put the turn sequence on the player board is great. They also have the Xenomorph turn sequence printed on the Hive track, which is great. I'm the type who forgets rules a lot. So the fact that I have aids printed on components in front of me in the play area, reminding me of following the turn sequence, following the Xenomorph sequence, love that. Please keep doing that. Upper Deck and all publishers. The last thing I will say about the player boards is I also really like the fact that there's three slots from left to right. The leftmost slot is for your squad leader, and then the middle and right slots are for your grunts. And they also have an upper half and a lower half. So this is cool. You lay your card, and the top half says depleted, and the bottom half says ready. And so basically, this is like an indicator. So you lay your card on the top of each slot, and that tells you, so it exposes the word ready at the bottom, and that is a visual indicator that that particular unit in your squad is ready to act, hasn't acted yet. And then when they do their action, you slide them down from the top so that you cover up the ready, and then you expose the depleted. So I really like this. I think that this is a great visual indicator, that, okay, which of my characters, which of my units in my squad have already taken their action this turn or previous turn, and you can see who's ready and who's depleted, and that's like a one-stop visual indication of what you've got. What are your resources? How are you going to face this coming turn? So I think that was a really nifty, thoughtful design element that they put into the player board. So oddly enough, I'm going to say that the player boards are probably my favorite component in this entire game.
Yeah, I'll echo your feedback. Definitely one of the best parts of the game. I really love the art on the back of the board as well. Even though you don't look at it, it's still, they included it. It's like this kind of thoughtfulness that should have gone into the tiles of the complex itself. I also do love that little slide effect where you shoot, you slide them down, and then sliding them back up is almost like you're slapping a magazine home as a Marine into the
Yeah.
pulse rifle. It's like lock and load. All right, we're ready to go now.
Yeah.
So that's kind
No,
of cool
yeah, you're
too.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very cool.
it's a neat little system there. So overall, the boards, the tiles, the squad figures, everything, I think it's pretty functional for a game of this type. The box and the packaging, as I mentioned before, it's based. It looks like an ammo can. It really does, and it's really kind of a neat concept. And the way they packed everything in there, it's like,
Yeah.
how are they going to put all the components in here? What did you think of that?
I have to give kudos to Upper Deck. Like the fact that it looks like an ammo box was really cool, like you mentioned, and then everything is kind of stacked vertically in layers. So at the bottom layer, so you've got two kind of what are these? Plastic inserts. What is this made of? Like
Yeah,
semi, and the bottom insert has slots for two of the miniatures, the tiles, and the cards, and they can all fit in there and not move around in the box, even without having to put the tiles and the cards in a plastic bag. So I like that. And then there's a piece of foam which kind of goes over that, and then there's another plastic insert with slots for the two other miniatures, the 30 dice, and then all of the different tokens and colored bases. And so everything is nice and compact and packed really, really well. And then the really cool thing is, when you first open it up, there's a mission order from Lieutenant Gorman.
right. Yeah.
Right? And Gorman's telling you in a kind of officious way what your mission is. Um, and then there's a little handwritten note from Master Sergeant Apone at the bottom, which says, "All right, sweethearts, you heard the man. Pass out those dossiers and get on the ready line." And I'm like, oh, so they thought about that this opening box experience, and they wanted to get you jazzed and into the theme right off the bat with this. Read this first mission order, laying right on top of a really nicely compacted layers of the components. And then the last thing I'll mention is that the rules dossiers, the 4 rules dossiers, which we'll talk about in a second, are kept in a confidential, an envelope marked confidential. So you get a nice thematic experience from this tiny box, I think. What do you think, Michael?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything you've said, and that's again why we're not really nitpicking, but we're kind of saying, why didn't they think of doing something like this with these other pieces? That inclusion of that dossier folder envelope thing is really cool. Uh, just little things like that. They put a lot of thought into it, but then it's like, well, these other things just didn't seem to cross the finish line, which is unfortunate. But as I said, I agree with everything you said with the packaging. It's outstanding. But you know what? My game is still out on my table here next to me, and I'm really afraid of packing it back up. I'm sure
It could
I'll
be
figure it.
challenging.
Yeah, it might be. It's like Tetris, man. I mean, I'm thinking, oh, this probably won't be that big of a deal, but I think I'll probably play it a few more times before I pack it up. So yeah, the components overall pretty decent. I mean, for the game, for the price point, there's a lot of opportunity here for growth, I think, or for improvement, though. So moving on to the rules. I think they were fantastically themed as dossiers. There's actually 4 rule books, as Martin said, that each cover different aspects of the game. And the intent here was that 4 different players could then sit down and then teach each other part of the game to others instead of the usual one person learning the game and then having to teach everybody how to play it. It's a very interesting concept for multiplayer, but as we're focused on solo players and especially me playing it solo, and I'm sure you as well, Martin. It's a
Mm-hmm.
pain, I think, for the solo player to have to go through 4 different books.
Yep.
There, fortunately, is something around this though. Board Game Geek, somebody, I don't know if it was Upper Deck or a fan, made, I think it was maybe Upper Deck, made a condensed rule book that they put into the file section for this game, which I think was absolutely necessary.
Mm-hmm.
That might have increased the cost of the game a little, but I really think that should have probably been included in the base game. It's just like this overall, like commander's guide. I want to say there is one labeled that. I can't remember offhand. It's laying under the box, and I can't grab it right now. But anyway, the rules are pretty good read though at a first glance. But once you get into the game, there's a few things that are not quite clear that could have been described better. So, Martin, what did you think of the rules?
I agree. The idea of breaking up the game rules across 4 rule books, that's very innovative. I've never seen that before. So what it does is it extends the cooperative aspect of the game. So not merely the gameplay, but also to even while learning the game. So the players have to rely upon each other to teach each other the parts of the rules that are assigned to each player. And the way that they're broken up is super thematic. So you've got a platoon leader, and they have their own dossier, and their job is to operate the phase deck, learn how the mission cards work, and track the win-loss conditions. You've got the master sergeant who sets up the game and trains the other players on the rules of shooting. You have the intel sergeant who operates the tracking deck, manages the hive counter and the 30 xenomorph dice, and then you've got the communication specialist who's in charge of learning the player turn sequence, player movement rules, and player action rules. So on the one hand, this multiple rule books or dossiers idea is great because it really reinforces the theme of the game and the cooperative aspect. On the other hand, if not all players are doing their jobs, then you can have gaps in the learning, gaps in the knowledge. And as Michael said, personally, I don't appreciate having to flip back and forth from one rule book to another to find the information. That just breaks up the game flow for me. And the fact that they put that condensed rule book is essential for the solo gamer. So right now, hear me now, believe me later. If you are a solo gamer, if you are a solo gamer and you want to play this game, you need to get that condensed rulebook PDF on Board Game Geek. You need to print it out. I think it's like 10 pages, 12 pages. And don't even refer to the dossiers, the 4 dossiers in the rule book. So again, I think that was a cool idea. I applaud Upper Deck and Ryan Miller for thinking about that. I've never seen it before, but if for a solo play, it's just not it feels a little gimmicky to me. Feels gimmicky.
So, gameplay, how does Aliens Bug Hunt play? When you're playing it, you're really engaged, I think, because you're moving your Marines across the map. You're uncovering new tiles. You're seeing these quarters where there's barriers that the colonists put up to try to keep the aliens out, which you probably saw in the movie. It's really thematic in that regard. And you're trying to locate mission tokens to fulfill 3 different missions, which are randomly drawn at the start of the game. You need to find those mission tokens. There's 9 total, 3 for each mission, and then evacuate your squad to win. That's a lot easier said than done, though.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
what do you think, Martin?
No, absolutely. Like, from a gameplay perspective, it's super straightforward. What you're doing on your turn, and I also like the fact that your turns are driven by a phase deck, right? Which is very similar to another favorite game of mine, Aeon's End. So, in other words, the phase deck will tell you whose turn it is next. So there's variable turn order in this game, which adds to the tension, right? Which I think is the intention here. So you flip over a card to see whose turn is next. It could be your squad, or it could be another squad, or it could be the Xenomorphs, right? So, and then the number of Xenomorph turn cards is increased depending on the number of squads in the game. So I think from a game design perspective, that is a nifty way to adjust the game difficulty based on the number of players, because obviously if there's more squads, then you get more opportunities to do more stuff, to explore more tiles, to try to get more mission tokens, to try to kill more Xenomorphs. So therefore the Xenomorphs have to have more turn opportunities to respond to the greater number of squads in the game, right? So I think that was a pretty nifty thing, and I really like that phase deck. I'm a huge fan of the variable turn order that pumps up the tension level piece. I think that's really nifty.
The interesting thing about that, when you draw your card, you have your squad act, but then if you draw the Xeno card, it's great. Now what do I do? Well, part of that is a little bit of a challenge because Martin and I both had issues with this. It's not very clearly explained how the Xeno card, actually, excuse me, how the Xeno phase comes into play. Once you pay attention to it and once you really go, oh, wait a second, that's right. What we were doing, I think, was every time we draw a Xeno card, we would play the Xeno phase, which meant getting overrun and getting hammered really quick.
Yeah.
Whereas the track of the Hive track that represents this, there's 9 spaces on it, and it starts in space 1, which has a xenomorph icon next to it, which means you do the xenomorph phase immediately when you start the game. And that's comprised of an attack, a move, and then a spawn. And since there's nobody on the map, or no xenomorphs, I should say, on the map to attack or move with, you spawn, and that's how you start the game. Then you draw a card. If it's a Xeno, you move that marker up the track, and there's a Xenomorph icon at 4 and 8, it looks like. And then you play the full Xenomorph turn there, but when you get to number 9, you have to add another Xeno card to the mix in the discard pile.
Yeah.
Right, to the discard pile. So you don't bring it out immediately, but it will come up in the future. And that is actually almost a race against time kind of a feature, because the longer you take to explore this complex, the slower you are, the more quicker those things are going to come into the deck. And I can't tell you how many times I've played the phase deck and Xeno card.
Oh my
I don't know
gosh.
how much that happened to you.
It's the same thing. It's so discouraging to have you resolve a Xeno phase and then you pull a card and it's another consecutive Xeno phase. It's just it's such a morale, drop.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, we were playing it wrong where we were playing it every time we draw the card, but when you draw 4 Xeno cards in a row, you go from a Xeno phase to another Xeno phase. So it's insane how quickly it can ramp up. But I mean, it's not a bad thing. I don't think. I kind of like that feature. So would you agree?
There's definitely, if you want a game that immerses you in the near hopeless feeling of being a marine in a strange place, outnumbered, and just trying to fight for your life against increasing waves of xenomorphs. This game does that for you.
Yes, it does.
It will absolutely do it for you.
Yep, it'll give you that tension, definitely. So we talked about a little bit where what happens when you draw a Xeno card, but when you draw the squad card, what happens? Well, when you do that, it's color coded. So you have three, is it? Three squad cards per color. If you got the red squad and the blue squad, you got three red squad cards. You got
Three
three blue
chances for
squad.
your squad to move in the phase
Right.
deck. You mean, right? Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
exactly. Plus the lieutenant card, which lets you play any of the squads. And you have to, if you're playing in a group, you have to
Right.
decide. But when you're a solo player, that's really easy. You just decide which one you want to do and you go with it. So when you draw a squad card, your squad moves first. You have three
Mhm.
movement points. And
Right.
that's broken up a little bit to where you move. If you move into a tile that has not been discovered yet, that's your move, period. You can't move any further. You can move through an empty tile that is already on the board that costs one movement point, as long as there's no barriers in the way. Now, if there's a barrier in the way to another revealed tile, that costs two to go through. So once you've moved, then you can choose an action for the squad, and there's four that you can do. You can shoot, which is pretty obvious. You shoot the
Mhm.
aliens. There's capture, which is if you find a tile with a mission token, you can capture that mission token. There's breach, which allows you to breach a barrier so you don't have to pay that extra movement to cross it, or
Mhm.
or load, I believe it is. I think that
Reload.
reload. Okay, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
reload. So you can move your, as we were talking about, sliding your characters back up to the ready status. So I think I was playing it wrong for a little while. That the shoot, no problem. Capture, no problem. Unload, no problem. But the breach part
Yeah.
was
Well,
weird.
in
I'm sorry.
breach,
Just reload.
that's why you have
Oh,
like a set of breach tokens.
I was thinking, and this was totally on me. It wasn't on the game. It was me thinking that I had to breach these to go through them. I wasn't thinking I could
Ah,
spend two movement to move through it. Now, granted, that was at the beginning of the
right.
game when there aren't hardly any tiles that are explored. But once they're explored and you're trying to get out, hey man, you can move through them. It'll just cost you two movement points. And of course, if you move into a tile with an alien cue or die in it, then you have to stop. You can't go any further, I don't think, unless there's another squad there, in which case you
Right.
can keep moving. So that was totally on me, like I said, and it might have actually saved my squad in one of my last games. I didn't quite make it. And that's part of the fun of the game is just getting to that, just barely almost winning, and then nope, aliens kill you. Okay, well, I'll try it again next time. So part as we talked about, there's three missions that you have to complete, and they're all randomly drawn. They're all very thematic. It's in neat font, and it looks like a computer printout kind of a thing for you guys. And they're things like fix the water system, get download data, stuff like that. And with each one of these, they have this special ability as well. Like for example, the water feature. If you fix that, or if you get a token for that, you place it on the mission card. If you place three, then that mission is satisfied, and you can satisfy the other two, and you can finish the game or try to finish the game. But each token that you place on a mission card lets you tap that particular special ability. You flip the mission token over, which shows it's depleted. It still counts towards mission completion, but it shows that you've actually used that ability. Like on the water card, as I was saying, it lets you heal two wounds, which is a really useful feature. So I always hope that I come across that card in my missions. There's other things to that as well that other cards allow you to do. It's almost like a power up kind of thing from a video game where you're going through and you find a pill or a token or something, and it makes your character stronger. That's essentially the feel for it. That felt a little more tacked on. I don't know. What do you think, Martin?
I like the fact that there's three random missions that you can get to play every time you play. So that's cool. And the fact that they are thematic to the film, they're very nicely in line with that. I like that. In practice, it was very, very hard in my games to actually collect mission tokens. So I think by the time my last game, when I got overrun and lost, I didn't even complete one mission. of the three that you're supposed to complete. I found two tokens, is what I'm saying. Like, it's
Uh-huh.
so ridiculously hard because it's random, right? It's like you draw the tiles and you can only collect a mission token if if you happen to flip a tile that shows you the mission token there. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
If the random draw shows you that tells you that you don't flip a tile over and has no mission, or you flip a tile over and has no mission token symbol on it, you don't get a shot at getting that mission, which means you don't have agency over um, how many opportunities you're going to have to find mission tokens. So that is a problem for me from a game design perspective. There's a lot of dependence on randomness there to be able to achieve game winning conditions, and there's no way to mitigate that.
That's a really good.
Is how I feel about it.
That's a good point. I mean, when
Yeah.
you look at the complex, so the complex is made up of these tiles, as we've said. There are there are 5 tall and then 6 deep. So you've got 30 tiles, I believe that is. I'm an English major. I'm not good at math, guys. So there, as he said, there's randomness throughout. I don't remember how many tiles there are that have mission tokens on them. Well, there's at least 9, obviously, so that you have enough to get through. But I'm looking at my last board from my last game right now, and there's one mission space in the very last row, 6 squares away from the entrance, and that's rough. I mean, as you said, you're trying to explore everything. You got to explore every tile because you never know when it's
Mhm.
going to come up, and you're going to be wanting to be very thorough, obviously, in the first area of the game because, as I said, when you move, you have to stop when you reveal a
Mhm.
tile. So there's really no benefit to like going all the way across the board to the 6th column of the complex to look because it doesn't matter. The way you shuffle things, as random as it is, all those mission tiles could appear right off the bat, or they might all be in the deeper end of the complex. It's just hard to tell. Some people might like that. It is a little off-putting. I wish it was just a little bit different. I wish I could put my finger on how that could be improved, but it's extremely random and extremely angering at times because you're like, where's that last mission tile? I can't find it. It's driving me nuts. And meanwhile, my squad's getting hurt. I'm taking wounds. The aliens are escaping out of the complex. Like it reminds me of that Bugs Bunny cartoon where they were playing baseball and they were all rounded around the bases going dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
That's kind of how
Well,
that felt.
I will say this, okay? This game is actually very similar to another game that I've played that I like a lot, which is called Tiny Epic Zombies. Have you ever played that one?
I have not. I've got some Tiny Epic games, but not that one.
Okay, so in Tiny Epic Zombies, essentially swap out the zombies for swap out the xenomorphs, and then similarly you have 3 random objectives or missions that you have to complete each time you play, and each mission. So the way that it works in Tiny Epic Zombies, unlike this game, is each mission tells you here are the ways to set up for this mission, and most of them come with their particular tokens, and you set them out on the map in specified places. So at least in Tiny Epic Zombies, you know where the tokens are that you have to go to collect to be able to complete that mission. You know where they are. Now, what you don't know, because they're face down, is you don't know if it's actually going to be useful. But that's a very different calculation from I'm waiting for a tile with a mission token written on it to be able to complete a mission. In Tiny Epic Zombies, you have agency. You're like, okay, and next you can actually make plans around it. Okay, those tokens are there, there, and there, and there. So I'm going to move in this direction. Oh, but I can't because there's zombies there. So it becomes a more strategic choice. Whereas in this game, it's more like I'm flipping a tile and I'm waiting for that that icon. I'm flipping a tile. I'm waiting for that icon. One is frustrating. In this game, it's very frustrating. In Tiny Epic Zombies, it's very strategic. And so, to me, that's how you separate better game design, i.e., in Tiny Epic Zombies, of how to collect mission tokens to achieve game objectives versus just very frustratingly too random game design, which is how you collect mission tokens in this game.
Right.
That's my rant, and I'm sticking to it.
Absolutely fine. Yeah, so winning this game is not easy as we've talked about. You win
I've
by getting all
I've
these
never
mission
won.
tokens. You have not? No,
Did
I
you?
haven't either.
Did you win?
No, no.
I've never
The
won it.
closest I got is set up right now on my board. I've got Vasquez's squad at the very entrance, but it happened to be that one damn tile I drew for the entrance was a two hive marker, or a two hive
Oh,
tile, for a two alien tile,
oh,
I should say. So
right, right.
whenever you go into the spawn phase, that's the first place they appear is to the far left of the complex. So that's something else that kind of drove me nuts was how you place aliens. But yeah, I instantly had two right there on her, and you can't progress until you have another squad. And I couldn't get my other squad up, and I ran out of dice. Let's just say that's how I lost the game. One way you can
Yeah.
lose is by running out of your 30 dice. You can't. You reach to place one, there aren't any. You're done. You
Mm.
lost.
That's how I've lost every single time. I get overrun.
Yeah, exactly. If that's the other thing too. If they escape into the wild, then you're done. I mean, once they so as I mentioned before during the Xeno phase, they move. If they're in your space with a Marine, they attack you. If they're adjacent, they move into your space. If they're not adjacent, though, they move to the left one square. And if they're already at the end row of the complex, then they escape out into the wild.
Right.
And that's kind of an odd feature to me. I say that because, well, that really wasn't the point of the movie, but maybe that's just a gameplay thing. Maybe I'm just overthinking
Hmm.
it because they escape into the wilds of LV-426. Who really cares, right? I mean, I think there's been other canon material, like comics and other books that have been written about other things happening on LV-426 after the incident with the nuke destroying everything. It's so maybe that has some impact in it as a gameplay thing, but it makes it feel more gamey because you're trying to stop all these things from escaping, and it's very difficult to do that when you're trying to get out too. Did you ever play it with more than two squads, Martin?
No, I've only ever played it with two squads. That's it.
Okay. It seems that it might make it more challenging to add more squads, but it also might be boring for players that would have to play a squad that acts as a defensive back, so to speak, who sits back in the end of the complex to stop aliens from escaping the map. And that feels like kind of a cheesy way of stopping the bad guys from winning the game as well. But you know, it's still it flows pretty well for a game. I'm not too it's not too shabby in that regard, but it's still there's some things to it that kind of bug me a little bit. Maybe we should talk about combat a little bit. I know we're already at an hour
Yeah.
and 15 minutes.
Yep. Yep. Let's talk about combat. I mean,
All right.
combat is one of the four things on the menu of actions that you have to choose from, right?
Yep. Absolutely. So yeah, combat is you roll the dice and you attack the Xenos. But the way it works is as Martin said, before you tap the Marine that you want to use, they have to be in a ready status. They have a firepower rating, and the firepower rating is a number that represents how many of the Xeno dice you can roll. So if you're in a tile, your squad is in a tile with 3 Xenomorphs, and you have a Marine who's ready with a firepower of 2, you tap that Marine, you deplete them, I should say, is the phrase, and then you choose 2 dice from that tile and you roll them. If you roll a blank, which is on 4 sides of this alien d6, you kill him and you put him back into the pool. If you roll the white scratch mark, I think you mentioned this earlier, it's a miss, and if you hit the red, then you get a wound, and the wound is suffered by the point man. Each Marine also has a armor rating, and I think in cases of most of them, it's a 4. So you can suffer up to 4 wounds, and these are all interesting tokens actually because they have a wound like it looks like a tattoo of a skull, like something that a Marine would get on their arm on one
Right.
side. Then the other side is either blank or it says KIA. So you add these
Right.
tokens without knowing, right? If without knowing what is on the other side of them to the,
Correct.
to the card, and when they suffer another wound, then you start flipping those over. And if you get a KIA, they're dead. If you
Right.
are lucky enough to flip all 4, or maybe unlucky if you're suffering that many wounds, and they're all blank, if they suffer another wound at that point, then they're dead. Period. There's no
Right. Right.
changing that. So Marines, they got a little bit of longevity to them, but they die pretty quick, and they can die pretty quick. And when they die, you slide everybody over to the right to take those spaces. If you happen to lose all the Marines in one squad, then you lose the game. Period. It's not all the Marines in the game; it's just one squad. You lose them, they're done.
I kind of think the combat system is actually, nice and streamlined. And it makes a lot of sense. And I like the fact that I've never seen this before, where you add damage tokens to your units, and then if the damage meets or reaches the armor level, then you don't add any more tokens. Instead, you start flipping them, and so there's a little bit of a game of chance there, right? It's like you flip it. Is it going to be blank? Oh, I live to see another day. If you flip it and it's KIA, then that unit is dead. But it's not. Like it's not soul crushing because you have other units. You know what I mean? It's so
Right.
so there's a little bit of forgiveness, I think, in how damage and combat and damage is resolved. And like I said, I like the fact that they thought about mechanically how are you going to simulate the idea that you have an overwhelming force of xenomorphs and you have a outnumbered force of Marines. But the Marines have superior firepower and destructive capability to the Xenomorphs. So if it's one-on-one, there's four sides, there's four chances on each die that you're going to kill that Xenomorph. So I think that that's a really good simulation of how it is in the film. These Marines are badasses, and if you go, the Xenomorphs don't stand a chance against them one-on-one because of their firepower. However, generally speaking, if you're fighting multiple xenomorphs, as you usually are, then they tend to overrun you. They'll suffer losses, the xenomorphs will, but they will also do damage to the Marine. So I think the combat system is a really fast and nice and accurate simulation of how combat was kind of depicted in the movie Alien. So I like those pieces from a game design perspective.
It is very fun actually to tap the Marines or deplete them and then roll the dice and see what happens. That one chance out of six that the alien's going to wound you, very small, but it tends to come up a lot. It does for me anyway.
Yeah.
It seems I was rolling one die, wound.
Well, the
Oh,
dice
great.
always hate me. That doesn't change. The dice will always hate me.
The dice hate everybody, I think, but yeah, that's definitely a problem. But another thing interesting to mention is the Marine special abilities. So some of them have
Right.
things that enhance their firepower, like Vasquez. I really like her because she adds 2 firepower to attack aliens in an adjacent tile, which you can do as long as you have line of sight and don't have a barrier in the way. So that
Right.
helps in some cases. Like for example, you got one Xeno in your area, but there's one next to you as well. Rolling 2 firepower, it seems kind of a waste. You're only having to roll against one, right? But you can use that extra to fire against a adjacent xenomorph. So that's kind of a good concept. Another cool one that I really like is Ripley. She lets you actually get rid of one of the grunts and add another named squad member
yeah.
to your squad, which is really cool. She has a 0 firepower though, so she can't fire on anything. So there's a little bit of a balance here to it, and they're all different. Every single
Well,
one of them special ability is different.
so I think that's really cool. You mentioned that she has 0 firepower, so she can't really fight unless there happens to be a mission token and the tile that she's in, and then she gets +3 to her attack, which I think is a nice thematic touch. It's like, it's kind of like expressing how in the movie, when Ripley, had to go and save Newt, or, you have to do these things, she becomes much more dangerous when she's got a mission. So
Right.
I like
Yeah.
that. There's a little bit of a nice touch there.
Very good. It's very much speaks to the characters. And
Mhm.
that's one of the things I wrote down that bothered me about the game was when using that special ability of hers. Is it a token or is it the space? Does it make more sense that she's in a space with it, or is it need to have the token? So once you grab the token,
Well,
that special ability goes away, right?
Once you flip a tile that has that icon on it, you place a token on it, right? So,
Right. Yeah. But then you take
Yeah.
the action to take the token and put it on a mission
Oh,
card.
I see what you're
Does
saying.
that mean her
Yeah,
firepower bonus is done?
correct. Yeah, I
So
would agree with that. That it
okay.
is the presence of the actual token, not the fact that there's an icon on that tile that she happens to be on.
I would almost play it like it's the tile, yeah, because it seems to me that you got to the end of the game, right, and you've gotten all your tokens, and now you got to escape. That's when Ripley is the biggest badass is near the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that would make more sense
that
to
would
me.
make sense. How you've just expressed it makes sense from a thematic perspective, but I
Right.
think
Yeah.
from a rules perspective in this
Yeah.
game, it's like
Game balance. Yeah.
it would be cheating.
We're solo players. We don't cheat. Come on.
What? No, I didn't just re-roll that die. What are
Nobody
you
saw
talking
that
about?
unless they watched you watch the video. Yeah. Nobody did
It
that.
was just a practice roll, man.
Exactly. Exactly. It was just warming up my wrist. Yeah. Okay. So the good, the bad,
Yeah.
and the ugly. For starters,
Hmm.
the good. It's for me very thematic. As I've said, it evokes the movie well. The art is amazing. It's really good. The card art, terrific. Marine characters are all good because they're all unique and special, and you want to try all of them out, right? You can't, of course, in your game, but you want to play more games, so you're trying them all out to see what combinations work the best, which ones are your favorites. And one of the best touches is the inclusion of the movie quotes. The character cards have their best lines on them. I think the Xenomorph cards do. Like close your eyes, baby. That's one of the ones on one of those cards. It's like, oh man, that scene was awful that first time I saw that. What do you think, Martin? What are your good points?
I'm going to agree with you that this game really gets you into the theme of the movie. And it does it with those quotes that you talked about. It does it with the card art. It also does it with the unique character abilities. It does it with the game design, a little bit of the game design elements, the way that combat works out, the fact that the Xenos are individually not tough and easy to kill, but they get you with their overwhelming superiority in numbers, whereas you have the Marines that are um, outnumbered, but because they have superior firepower, like all those things. Um, like for me, if you want a game that you can put on the table and it, super fast setup, fairly relatively easy to learn, and really get you in the feel and flavor of, that part of Aliens where the Colonial Marines are making a sweep through the station or through the colony. This does it, man. It's a dream come true for me. So those are some of the good things about this game for me.
Some of the bad points now. For me, I'm
Oh, you
probably
had to go there. You had to go
uh,
to the bad parts now. Okay.
we have to. We have to be objective, right? So sometimes it's a challenge to find things that are bothersome. But we've talked at length about what bothers us about this game so far. For me, there's a few other things, like the thematic side of things. It was so good, but there were so many opportunities to make it better. For example, the tiles are all corridors. They're all quarter intersections. And I get that. I mean, as you mentioned, you hit it on the head. I wasn't sure how to express that when you said it's that first part of the movie where they're entering the complex and they're searching. That's a really good tense moment and that really makes sense. But when you're looking at it from a high level, just like I'm looking at my map right now, it's just nothing but plus signs across the table. It's like, they could have maybe made a med lab space or an operations space or colonist quarters, something to break it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
It might not
I
make
agree. I
sense.
agree.
Yeah, it might not make sense from a storytelling perspective, but overall, I think it would have probably helped a little bit to do that. Some other missed opportunities, such as maybe having encounters or maybe making the missions a little different, like having actual colonists that you could rescue. I mean, that wasn't the movie at all. Everybody was with chest bursters. I think at that point in the movie, they didn't include any of that. Actually, there's no face huggers, no eggs, nothing like that. But I will say this: when I watched the video from Upper Deck on BGG, from the BGG Con bit that they did, there seemed to be a hint that there would be an expansion and it would involve a queen. So that is very interesting to me. It's not necessarily a bad thing that I mentioned it here. I just want to say it as maybe there's a mitigating factor to all of our design and thematic issues that there may be going to be improvements. Maybe they're going to add that kind of thing. Maybe there's going to be more depth to this. So here's hoping. The game also it had a bit of and I'm going to date myself here, root beer tapper feel to it. I mentioned this to you a couple of days ago because there's a well, not a computer, a stand up arcade game from the 80s, and I'm really dating myself now, that you played called Root Beer Tapper. If you go to YouTube and check it out, you'll get the idea of what I'm talking about. You're this guy going from bar to bar. There's four of them, and there's people coming, and you're sliding them root beer, and they're sliding back empty glasses. It's just like this management where you're trying to mitigate keeping them from getting to the end of the bar to satisfy them and get them to go back. It's kind of, I don't know. That's just occurred to me, and now that I thought about it, I can't unthink about it. But other than that, I only a few things bad. What about you, Martin? What are some of yours?
Yeah, so as far as the bad parts, we talked about this. This is a budget game, and it shows. So the fact that there's no xenomorph miniatures, that they are represented by dice, and therefore makes it more abstract. That's disappointing to me. I understand why they did it from a gameplay perspective. I understand why they did it from a budget perspective. Still disappointing, have to say. The fact that the rules are broken up by default into 4 dossiers in the box, and they didn't include the condensed rules. Again, I understand that from a budget perspective. Still annoying. Not everyone who's going to buy this game for solo is even aware that the condensed version of the rules is on PDF on Board Game Geek. Not everybody's hip to that, hip to the Board Game Geek, side of things of the board game hobby, and it's an extra printout and all that stuff. So there's not a lot of consideration inside this box for the solo gamer. I've already said that I think that the rules being broken up feels a little gimmicky. I appreciate the innovativeness of it, or the innovation shown there, but this implementation was lacking for me. And you've talked about the fact that in terms of the tiles, there's some nice art flourishes there, but it's a flat black back. So you could have just given us a little extra mile there, a little extra effort. So there's a number of areas in this game where they kind of fell short, and they kind of could have, possibly upped the game a little bit without, upping the budget on it. And probably the most egregious problem with this game: no rounded tile corners. That's the biggest problem with the game.
Some more gamers are going to be very happy to hear that.
I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek here, but right, yeah. Okay, but those are my bads that I'm going to choose to mention.
The ugly part of the game for me, it gets really grindy, really fast, and it can be very repetitive. It almost felt like I talked about Root Beer Tapper a minute ago, but more so, it's almost like you're a zookeeper just trying to keep the animals from escaping the zoo while you're looking for power-ups to help you along the way. I mean, I could see this game being rebranded as some kind of zookeeper adventure kind of a thing. And I don't like that I can think that. I want to think of this as being its own unique kind of a game, and it is to very much a good extent, but there's just certain little teeny things about it, and that's one thing that just really bugged me. Being grindy, especially near the end of the game where you're trying to get out, but you just can't. It's kind of frustrating as part of it just doesn't feel like you have a lot of control with the randomness, as you mentioned, actually several times. It's just got quite a bit to it that makes it a little bit ugly in my book.
Yeah. What about you, Mark? Yeah, I do have an ugly for this one, and I mentioned it earlier. From a game design perspective, what I feel is the unforgivable sin of the fact that I need to collect 9 mission tokens to even have a chance and get back to the APC to even have a chance of winning this game. But my ability to collect those 9 mission tokens is 100% dictated by the randomness of tiles coming out, without any way to change that. That to me, that's just an unforgivable piece of game. It's like a game design misstep. And as I said, it's even made worse by the fact that I have played similar games like Tiny Epic Zombies, where they handle the distribution of tokens for completing objectives for completing the game in a much, I think, better way, in a much smarter and less random way. But it still has some element of uncertainty and therefore tension. So that's ugly. Just the mission tokens randomness ugly for me.
Do you think there's a way to house rule things like that to make it easier? Like, for example, maybe remove 5 of the tiles that don't have mission locations on them from the deck, so that you're only going through. You're missing that last column. It might make it a little bit easier. I don't know. Do you have thoughts on that?
Possibly, but honestly, I don't know how to change it. Because
Yeah. Okay.
the tile laying element, the drawing, and then the tile laying is part and parcel of the game. You could change it by adding a drafting element, a la Seven Wonders, where it's like you have a market row, say, of 5 tiles exposed, and then instead of blind drawing from a face down deck of tiles, you choose from one of those that are exposed on the market, and then you refresh the market every turn. But at that point, it now becomes a different game, right? It fixes it from a game mechanism perspective, but then it now affects the theme of the game, because the whole point of this game is you're exploring the unknown. You're flipping
Right.
a face down tile, right? So yeah, I mean, yeah, we could talk more about at length about what are the what options would be available to a game designer to kind of try to fix this. Like, another idea is you already start with all 30 tiles laid out in your tableau, but they're all face down, and
Yeah.
you place markers on randomly selected tiles that tell you there might be a mission token there, but there might not. Now it starts to become a little bit more strategic, because it's like,
Sure.
we're going to make our way over to there because we think we have intel that tells us that there might be a mission token there, but it's not. It's not sure. It's not 100% sure. So
Right.
so then that changes your calculation a little bit.
I was just about to say maybe you've got intel on different parts of the complex I'm going in. I mean, you would think this would be a thing anyway for Marines, right? They would know,
Yeah.
have a map of the area, and they know where they're going. And if they know they need to fix the water
Right.
feature, or they need to get data from operations, they should know where they need to go to do that. I mean, they did in the movie, right? So it makes sense,
Right.
that makes a lot more sense. So yeah,
So that
that
sounds
might
like a
be good.
cool like twist to that.
Yeah,
And then your
absolutely.
intel might be old or wrong, and so you
Right.
might schlep your way over there, and it's like, oh, okay, well, there's the unexpected here, So
Right, right.
um,
Like a big hole
yeah,
from an alien bleeding everywhere. You never know. Yeah, that's cool.
yeah,
Okay. Well, I think we've dissected this game at great length, like a corporate stooge would want to dissect an alien in many of the movies. So, we
like Burke would want to take it back instead of wipe it out.
right. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, stump discussion. Martin, what do
Mhm.
you think?
This game does not get the stamp of approval for me. I am
Yeah.
glad to have it in my collection. Um, I think that uh, when you set it out and when you first start playing, you really get that exciting feeling of being there in the colony with your Marines by your side. You get a nice cooperative feeling, but as you pointed out, Michael, very sagely, as the game goes on, it just becomes this ugly grind, and you're like, so can we this please be over with already? And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
True. Yeah, unfortunately, that is a thought. But like you, I will say the same thing. I say no to the stomp. Uh, Even though I love this genre, I love this movie, and the game I really do like too. Despite all of our negativity about it, not a lot, but it's still it's like there's faults to the game, but I still like playing it. I still enjoy it, and I
hmm
think that's part of the first part, as you said, it's very enjoyable at first. You get this theme going on, and you're starting to explore the complex, and you're sitting there making the motion tracker noise, right? As you play it, you're going making those popping noises with your lips as you're playing it, right? Or is that just me?
I'm sorry, what?
I was making a joke, like
Oh,
you're going you're
oh,
going
Oh,
like
sorry.
motion tracker, you know?
No,
Yeah,
no, I
that,
heard popping noises and I'm like, proximity alert. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it's absolutely a good game. I'm very happy as you are to have it in my collection, and I will play it again. I definitely know I
Yeah,
will. So, and I'm really actually very intrigued by Upper Deck's talk of a expansion. So I hope that they
yeah.
do add a queen to it, and they do add some more thematic value to the game. I would be all over it, to be honest with
W-
you. I
Yeah, we did get a request from somebody on our Facebook group on Solosaurus. Like, would if you like blank, this game is for you. Do you
uh,
have any thoughts on that?
hmm, that is a good question.
Like, if you like super light skirmish games
Yes,
with a little
yes.
bit of tile exploration, I think this game is definitely for you.
Yep, yep. If you're old enough to remember the movie Aliens, if you saw it in the theater when it came out, you're probably a professional. You've got an office job, you know, and you don't have a lot of time maybe for games. Something like this is easy to get into, despite the
Yeah,
rules going everywhere. You got the condensed rolls. Once you figure it out, once you play it, it's really easy to get back into, I would think.
yeah. It's not that complex.
Right.
On your turn, you move and then you do one action from a menu
Yep.
of four. So,
Yep.
yeah, there's that. So, and it's really super thematic. So if you like those things, then this game is for you. If you are the type who doesn't like losing every single time, this game is not for you because you're going to lose every single time.
Right. Yep.
I can't figure out how to win yet based on with the rules as written.
It's like Robinson Crusoe in space.
Oh no, no,
Maybe not
we're
that
not gonna,
bad, but
you had to go there.
no,
Don't
I'm
go
just saying
there.
from a losing perspective, you always lose. But you know, you still so yeah, sure, you got that point where you always lose, but is there that draw pulling you back in to want to play it again to see if you get past it? It's like Friday, like we talked about in the last
Yeah,
episode. It's hard as heck, but
yeah,
you want to play it again. You want to try it
yeah.
again. Or maybe if things go this way, it'll be better. Maybe I'll
I'll grant
draw
you.
these mission tiles earlier. I don't know.
I'll grant you that. I still do feel like playing it again. So there
Yes,
is that.
I definitely will too. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us here. Just a reminder, we are part of the Dice Tower Network. And for even more Solosaurus, join our post show discussions and other shenanigans on Facebook at facebook.com/Solosaurus. You can also follow us on Instagram at Solosaurus Podcast or shoot us an email at solosauruspodcast@gmail.com.
So we're also on Board Game Geek, and we are in the gaming related top level forum, and the sub forum is called Podcasts and Blogs and Solosaurus. But honestly, the quickest way to find us is just go to your favorite search engine, search for the term Solosaurus BGG, and you'll go right to our section on Solosaurus on Board Game Geek. I will also once again mention that there is on Board Game Geek the Solosaurus micro badge. And if you would like to get your very own shiny virtual micro badge to show off your fandom and appreciation for the Solosaurus podcast, shoot me a geek mail. My handle on Board Game Geek is at Dr. Henry Armitage. That's at sign Dr. Henry Armitage. And I will spot you the Geek Gold so that you can have your very own Solosaurus micro badge.
Thanks again to Stone Valley Games for providing us with these review copies. We're happy to do that so we can bring to you these reviews and discussions. As always, if there's any particular games you'd like us to take a look at, feel free to send us an email, shout out at us on social media. Thanks again for listening. My name is Michael Eckenfels.
And my name is Martin Gonzalez. Thanks and bye, everybody.